Oh great, is that another scripted video from Shenpai herself? Yeah, unfortunately it is. Welcome to the video game experience, featuring Final Fantasy XIV's Shadowbringers. As you guys know, I'm not quite the best when it comes to making scripted content. At the same time though, I can't help but dive into the absolute joy that is the newest expansion to one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing MMOs as of right now. Some of you might remember that I once made a video very similar to this on Persona 5, yet I decided that I would be a little bit less critical and focus more on what makes this game absolutely wonderful and a joy to experience, since I'm obviously not a professional video game reviewer. I mostly have nothing but praise to give to this entry, and you all are going to feel my full fury of love and adoration that I have stored for Shadowbringers. The first half will be completely spoiler-free, so everyone can watch it without any problems or worry that I'm going to reveal any major plot points. I will put a warning once we do enter spoiler territory, and on screen will also be timestamps for all of you who do want to jump straight to the spoilers. I'll see you guys at the end. Well, if you are not familiar with Final Fantasy XIV or the Final Fantasy series in general, it is a Japanese RPG-heavy fantasy/science fantasy franchise released by Square Enix, where each game ranges from different styles and different approaches to the fantastic world that is built around the title. Not every game is connected in its story. Every title is its own and has its own unique characteristics and is not a direct sequel or prequel to any of the already existing ones. So if you wanted to pick a game and play it, you would not need any prior knowledge, and you could full-on throw yourself into the madness that this particular title brings. Even though Final Fantasy XIV is an MMORPG that differentiates from all the other games, it does stay true to this formula of having its own world and own story, but still keeping parts of the FF universe alive, and very much implemented to its economy and style. The vibrant land of Eorzea and its inhabitants and monsters and primals and just absolute amazing characters, it hasn't always been like that. Final Fantasy XIV 1.0, the very first version of the game, and an absolute mess, coming with multiple problems and with a terrible battle and crafting system, fatigue, and so many more things that made this MMO into an absolute disaster. Not only that, but literally one flower pot had as many polygons as a playable character, but we honestly really don't like thinking about that one too much. It causes too much pain. But from the heavens descended a man with the power of 1,000 burning Namazus, a man who would work on the mad rebirth of 14 and the absolute success that is a realm reborn Yoshi. Wait, that's the wrong, here, let me show you here. There he is, Naoki Yoshida, our father, our lord, Yoshi P. If you want more insight and details on the fall and rebirth of this game, there's a very amazing documentary that I will link in the description that you should definitely give a watch. That stuff is
nice.
In August of 2013, A Realm Reborn was released, and with that, the incredible rekindle of the MMO we know today. It also kinda was 14's birthday. I totally didn't make this video also in correlation of that. Not at all, no. Since its initial release, we've had 3 expansions so far: Heavensward, Stormblood, and the most recent one, Shadowbringers. That never gets old. After a long time of teasers and live letters, the release of 14's 3rd expansion hit with an early access on June 28th and then opened up to everyone else on July 2nd, giving us many things like an incredible story, absolute stellar music, beautiful places, and actually challenging dungeons and trials. And I honest to God don't mean that lightly. They expect people to finally be better at this game after Stormblood. The dungeons now require a lot more mechanics, and that stuff is so rewarding. There were also minor and subtle changes when it came to cutscenes, where player characters finally have more animations, finding aether currents was a lot easier, leveling is not as tedious as it was before, and the little quality of life details that were brought with the expansion, they weren't necessary, but they made the game better. Along with that, every class was in some way reworked or changed, either in major ability changes or with minor tweaks, something that the team is obviously still trying to balance. We also received completely new classes like Dancer and Gunbreaker, and 2 new races, which are the Hrothgar and the Viera. To put it into perspective, yeah, there's a lot of content. The team managed to tie the story together nicely, bringing back back past problems that were never solved and giving them a closure in a way that you never expected. Exploring a completely new world different from the one you inhabit brings forth a new and entirely empty slate to explore. I'm talking from creatures to economies to areas, just you name it and you have it. Even though everything is so new, you also don't feel like you're out of place because they put this homey feeling to every single zone. And they also tie back to the world that you have been playing in for the past 2 expansions that you have already familiarized yourself with. Shadowbringers as its 3rd expansion is now contending with Heavensward for Best Story, an experience with incredible dialogue and enthralling plots that range from wholesome to also incredibly disturbing in its subtext. The person to thank for such an incredible story is Natsuko Ishikawa, who has also worked on previous story pieces in the game, which are The Binding Coils, Crystal Tower, and most known for the Dark Knight job quest. Honestly, can we just get a round of applause for her? While we're at it, let's not forget the incredible soundtrack of the expansion that was composed by Masayoshi Soken, who just completely tied the experience together with a boss theme that I will not so easily forget. We are now heading into minor spoiler territory. If you do not wish to know about the details of A Realm Reborn, Heavensward, or Stormblood, please turn away and experience the game for yourself. Looking at all 3 expansions next to each other, it is very obvious to see that the story itself had an immense amount of plots to tell, some being hidden behind raids or side content that you had to access manually. ARR in itself is the brand new beginning to a game, so it would only make sense that the story wouldn't be solid. The stigma behind MMOs is usually the same. It lacks on a narrative side, but 14 manages to turn that on its head. Not to say the ARR storyline was amazing, would be giving it a bit too much credit, but it wasn't boring and uninteresting either. For what it was back then, it definitely didn't leave the player wanting too much, and once the threshold of the post-story was complete, the jump from one experiment to a solid story on Heavensward begins. Heavensward was praised for its balance and quality, better trials, dramatic plot, and characters that still impact people through this day. A story that was so serious in its core to bring the player to a different form of political and war-driven view, yet gives them a payoff that makes you feel like the hero that stands behind the title of Warrior of Light. With the end of Thordan and Nidhogg's reign rises the story of Stormblood, a story that revolves around the revolution and reclamation of peace in Alamigo, with a side plot around Doma. The villains of Yotsuyu and Xenos show 2 different forms of evil and how they evolved around the main protagonist. Stormblood may not have been praised like its predecessors for its writing. The dungeons and trials were all major gameplay upgrades that made it more fun and dramatic, but also showing new and challenging mechanics. 14 was holding its place well in the MMO scene, a game that offered different things to a multitude of players, embracing role-playing while also giving respect to the hardcore players. A world like this is almost perfect in its embrace of your character and making you feel special, and giving you everything you need to tie yourself close to your own warrior and playing in a style that suits you. But all of that changed when Shadowbringers attacked. BAM! There it is, baby! Right there on the screen! Now that's what I call quality content! Ah yes, Shadowbringers. I do have to admit this was the first time I was present during the launch of an entirely new expansion, yet have heard the horror stories that spawned from players during the launch of Stormblood. I was incredibly nervous as the servers were only open for 1 more hour until they would inevitably shut down. The last moments for 4.5 and the many changes that would soon come. The new day arrives and we are eager to get in and experience the new world that it puts before us. With excitement in our hearts and people scheduling holidays just to play this expansion, we all waited patiently for the servers to finally allow us to log in and play. As a warrior main, you could probably tell how absolutely devastated I was to see all of my abilities be Thanos snapped from my collection of skills, but we remapped our abilities and went off to play the story, finally being in the world that we have been waiting on for so long. Shadowbringers for me was an incredibly magical experience. I didn't rush it, nor did I play it by myself as my friends decided to play alongside with me as we experienced the new content. Learning a fight and getting to see its mechanics without having the anxiety of an angry healer staring at you, it was something that I have never felt before. It was almost like a rush of adrenaline through and through, wondering what would happen next and everybody being clueless of the outcome. The story itself is, in my opinion, the strongest out of the expansions, even triumphing Heavensward in this emotional impact and making you feel for the world you are aiming to save, turning the concept of Warrior of Light on its head and experimenting with more than the normal good versus evil concept. We aren't even close to seeing the end of this, but with the near raids being right around the corner and more story being thrown our way, I, for one, can't see where the story is going from here, but I'm ecstatic to go into it. Warning! We're delving into deep spoiler territory. Please experience Shadowbringers for yourself. I beg of you. let's get one of the most important parts of the story out of the way, the Crystal Exarch. Even though the reveal of the Crystal Exarch itself wasn't really much of a shocker, thanks to the multitude of times they told us to finish the Crystal Towers story, the way it was done is what truly mattered. I remember skipping through most of the side story involving Grahatia, so I never really truly knew what his personality was, just that I knew of him and knew that he disappeared into the tower after the World of Darkness. Yet the execution of this man in making you believe he tore your family from you and also betraying you in his reveal makes those emotions inside you turn more than you want to admit. Graha and his actions were one of the highlights of the entire story. The way he adored the Warrior of Darkness with every fiber of his being. Also, his dedication to his duty makes him one of the best characters in his expansions. He would be the best if it wasn't for those damn meddling Asians. Of course, you would catch me thinking that the best part of the story was the wonderful Emmett Selk himself. A man that had so much character and so much charisma that it blew every other villain of 14 out of the water. And I think the reason why it worked was because he was a pseudo-villain through and through. He tried to make amends in a way that made it believable, even helping out the team from time to time, like the part where Ishtola once more snapped herself out of reality only for him to pull her out of her situation, and also providing information and an incredible, intriguing personality to the table. While we are on the topic, I actually have my wonderful friend Forever KT here, who has some things to say about this expansion as well.
Alright, where's my script? Okay, opinions. 14 has always had its highs and lows with me as far as expansions. Heaven's Sword to me was okay. Stormblood was pretty good. Shadowbringers really umped it up a bit. And while the main plot was inherently distant from the main conflict, the plot felt unique and blew my expectations way out of the water. But I'd be lying if there wasn't some instances that didn't either sit right with me or just felt kinda padded. The situation with the trolley and Amareg to me stands out as the worst offender. Like, just a few moments ago we were rushing, and now we're in a town and we're helping some dude get over his dead wife, and now there's golems everywhere. Like, were we not in a rush? There are some parts that I feel like you could have cut out and the story would have been fine. I know that's a bit weird saying coming from an MMO, but it felt less needed. But that probably gives more credit to the main story because I found it just so interesting that any side tangent or any divergence from the main plot made me dislike any moment where I had to stop and smell the flowers. Speaking of story, for once, no one got on my nerves this time. No one really did anything that made me want to scream. What are you doing? Honestly, I thought I'd hate Baby Benphilia, with my main worry that she'd just be a carbon copy of what we left back at the Waking Sands. But honestly, she was very endearing, and ultimately I ended up liking her way more than other characters that we've known for ages. Thank God. Yeah, I really didn't like the gun-toting gunbreaker, regardless of how many times you made him do random gymnastics in the air. He just ended up coming off more childish than the actual child. I wanted to smack him with how he talked in some scenes. He did improve in the late game, but his attitude was a pill in most places. However, on the opposite side of the spectrum, if we want to talk about a great character, we have to talk about the antagonist / reverse protagonist, depending on how you look at it. That being the main antagonist, Emmett Selk. The Sass Master himself, who in my opinion was one of the best antagonists that this series has graced us with. And I give kudos to the writers for being able to show his perspective and showing us that the big bad Asians are more than just a one-dimensional cartoon Saturday villain. That they have their own goals, their own desires that come from eons of struggle. And it's all presented beautifully both in the last dungeon and trial of the main scenario. You feel bad for them at one point. Not enough to let them run wild, of course, that'd be counterproductive, but enough to sympathize with their plight in wanting to bring back a world that they've lost. God, have you seen some of the scenes with him? He's an absolute treat. His sass gives great counterbalance to some of the rougher scenes in the story. And honestly, his chemistry with the group as a whole is absolutely stunning. All in all, Shadowbringers managed to absolutely stun me with its story and its plotline. This expansion shows just how far Square and the Final Fantasy team have grown from its rather rough start. Each expansion has improved over the last, and Yoshi P has permanently stolen my wig. He won't give it back, y'all. Yoshi, please, my edges.
As KT has said, this expansion has shown how endearing 14 as a whole has become, and how the team is constantly listening and hearing out to our criticism. Even though it isn't perfect, it's the next best thing. The trials themselves are beautiful, and the Eden raid tier has been an absolute blast to master. This is the first time I've actually raided on release and managed to join a static and do this. Now with the Alexander Ultimate on the way, I can't wait to throw myself in there as well and absolutely hate myself. It's quite funny to see that I used to detest the idea of playing 14, and now I am here and I'm fully immersed in the game and its story and the world, and I even got sponsored by Square themselves. Isn't that amazing? Even the community in a whole is something I will cherish, and I can't wait to see the upcoming patches and the upcoming content. But there's just one character I haven't talked about quite yet. Well, there's its own video coming out for her as well, but it will take some time, and it will delve a little bit deeper into the story and its writing. Until then, I can't wait to see you on the other side. Wait, we're not quite done here. Look down in the description for a contest that will be held in Crystal, DC on the 27th of October. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've been sitting on this idea for quite a while, and it's not as rounded out as my Persona video is, but it's a new attempt at scripted content, and I'm working together with my new editor, KaigaYT, who did an incredible job on this project. You can find his links in the description, and I'll see you guys in my next video.